Living with Cancer and Sleep, Episode 3, Upping Your Game, More Strategies and Resources for That Good Night's Sleep. Hello and welcome to our podcast about sleep and cancer. I'm joined by Matt Williams, a Senior Program Manager for Mental Health with the Oxford Academic Health Science Network. He has a special interest in sleep. This is our last podcast in our series on sleep. Today we are going to continue talking about strategies, tools and resources for people to try out. Before we get into that, I just wanted to raise the topic of sleeping aids, such as herbal pills, over-the-counter or prescription drugs. We won't be focusing on this in this podcast, but I just wanted to say that if you do choose to try any of these remedies, please buy them from a reputable source and ask your pharmacist about any interactions, and please also do consult with your doctor or your nurse before you try them out. Even with natural remedies, there may be interactions that can interfere with treatment or other medications, so please do get advice before you start taking them. Now, back to strategies that do not involve pills. In what other ways can listeners promote sleep, Matt?
Well, there's a real movement now to find apps and other kind of digital solutions for sleep. Many of these are based on some of the principles of cognitive behavioural therapy for insomnia, which is a sort of a psychological approach that looks at things like, calming your racing mind, giving you techniques, tackling some of the assumptions that we have about sleep, and often delivered by a therapist. But actually there are digital solutions now which actually allow people to benefit from some of those techniques without the input from a trained therapist. So the one which I would hold out as being one that's worth looking at is Sleepio. So Sleepio is a digital therapeutic, and that means that it's a digital product that actually allows the treatment to be delivered through this. In this instance, it's an online treatment rather than being an app. So you'd access Sleepio through your laptop or desktop computer, and it allows you to find your sleep score and then to run through a series of 6 sessions which are delivered online, and you can do them at the time of your choosing, preferably doing daylight hours so it doesn't interrupt you with your sleep. And if you do those, it can, it has 12 randomized controlled trial evidence, which is quite unusual in this space, and that's something which people can use. But there are other digital products as well, and I think it's quite good that people try to find ways to improve their sleep that don't involve the potions, the pills, and the medication. So that's one aspect that people can look at.
And I'm just thinking about listeners that may want to do their own research. What resources would you recommend to them?
Okay, so I think the key thing is that people find the resources that work for them. What sort of sleep help do they want to find online, for example? So there might be some apps for your mobile phone, for example, which play soothing sounds, meditations, all that sort of thing that can help just as background noise to help soothe you to sleep. That might be one thing that people look at. Or there are more kind of interventionist approaches, as it were. There are things like Sleep Station. There's one called Sleep. There's all sorts of ones there. And a key thing is to find the ones that are well evidenced and well recommended. So some research is good, but it can be a bit baffling out there. I'm just going to jump back to Sleepio because the key thing why I've brought this one up is that Sleepio currently have a partnership with Macmillan Cancer Care. So if you want to try Sleepio and you have a diagnosis of cancer, you can use sleepio.com/Macmillan, and that will take you through to be able to use that. But that might be something which you look at. It's NICE recommended. It's got it's CE marked and all of those things. and it might be a good place to start. But to some extent, people often sort of look slightly quizzically when they think about a digital solution or an online solution for sleep, because they say, well, isn't the blue light from your computer or from mobile phones, isn't that counterproductive? As I said earlier, if you do your research during daylight hours, if you do any sessions, online sessions, do them in daylight hours, put your phone away, at least an hour before you go to bed.
Absolutely. And again, once more, it's a matter of people being curious, perhaps, trying it out, and then seeing how it works for them. And maybe for some, not for others.
Absolutely, and also to ask if you belong to a support group, or you've got friends or family or people who've been through a similar situation, ask what worked for them. It might work for you. Be curious. And if it's not working for you, that's fine as well. Do you know what I mean? There is no, I've spoken to a lot of people who've used various digital solutions for sleep, and some of them have said this has been life-changing. This has been, I've always suffered from poor sleep, now I don't, and it's all thanks to this. And I speak to other people who go, no, it was terrible, it didn't get on with it, it felt really clunky, or I felt I was being patronised, or all of those experiences are real and should be acknowledged and accepted. It's finding the bits which are right. But I'd much rather people sort of looked at some of these new technologies that are coming on board that avoid taking any of the sort of the prescription medication, which might be might be helpful in very short term, but actually in the long run, sleep and good sleep, whether you've got cancer, whether you don't, whether life's tough at the moment or whether it's not, we all have trouble sleeping. And remember in the first episode we talked about between 40 and 50% of the population having poor sleep or disrupted sleep at any one time. Sleep is not an easy thing to come by.
Again, as I said in the previous episode, there's a paradox about sleep. If you badly want to sleep, it evades us. So this kind of more gentle approach, curiosity, that maybe actually lead to a little bit better sleep. So I've got a final question. If there is one thing, or two things that it may be, I don't know, you would ask listeners to try out, what would that be?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said about being curious. Actually being open-minded about, first of all, I suppose it's about taking your own sleep seriously. I think quite often we undervalue sleep. You hear people sort of go, I've been working so hard, I barely have time to sleep, whether that's students or people in business or whatever, almost sleep is people see it as an impediment to them getting on and being successful. Actually, I think we need to kind of counterbalance that. So first of all, I'd ask people to take their sleep seriously. I'd ask them to take their own circumstances seriously as well, to really think about what works for them, not to put pressure on themselves. I've mentioned a handful of some of the digital solutions that are out there for sleep or designed to help people with their sleep, but these are not silver bullets. They might be helpful, and I hope they are, but they may not be. So don't put too much pressure on yourself or on a particular technique. Keep an open mind. Try them. Don't give up just after one go, unless you really don't think it's for you. And I think fundamentally, is that everybody is their own individual. Everyone has their own issues with sleep. Whether they're in tip-top health or whether they're really struggling, but the key thing is that you're not alone. As you're lying awake at 2 or 3 in the morning, you certainly are not alone. There are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Britons, and people across the world who aren't sleeping at that time. And I think that's important. That can be, doesn't help you there and then, but at least you might feel a little less alone in the wee small hours.
I think that is a wonderful message and a good place to end this podcast. So once again, thank you so much, Matt, for joining us. And I hope listeners have found this series of podcasts helpful. And all that remains for me to say is take care of yourself and sleep well.